The night I gave birth, I was alone in a parking lot. No husband, no mother, no hand to hold. Just me, the cold January air, and contractions hitting every 3 minutes. My phone screen blurred through my tears as I tried to call someone, anyone, from my own family. And do you know what my brother told me? He said, and I quote, "Just get a cab, Lily. It's not that serious." That was 18 months ago. And now, that same brother is standing in my living room, telling me he deserves to raise my daughter. My name is Lily Rose, and I grew up in a family that taught me two things from a very young age: smile through pain and never ask for too much. We were not a wealthy family, but we were not struggling either. My parents, David and Marlene, had built a modest but comfortable life in a mid-sized town in Ohio. My father worked in logistics management, and my mother was a nurse, a real nurse, the kind who would work double shifts and come home still somehow warm enough to make dinner. We had a house with a backyard, a dog named Chester, and holidays that looked picture-perfect from the outside. But picture-perfect and actually perfect are two very different things. I am the middle child. My older brother Marcus is 4 years ahead of me. My younger sister Cora is 6 years behind. And the truth about being a middle child in a family like mine is that you learn to make yourself small. You learn not to ask too much. You learn that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And since you are neither the oldest nor the baby, you just quietly figure things out on your own. Marcus was always the golden child. Smart, athletic, charming in the way that makes adults love you immediately. My parents beamed whenever his name came up. Every soccer trophy, every academic award, every new girlfriend, Marcus was the sun our family orbited around. I do not say that with resentment anymore. I spent years being resentful, and all it did was exhaust me. But I say it because it matters to understand what came later. I was the quiet one. I read books, I kept journals, I had a small circle of close friends, and I was generally considered responsible and low maintenance. My parents would occasionally compliment me by saying things like, "Lily, you're so independent, you never need anything." And I used to take that as a compliment. Now I understand it differently. It meant they had trained me so well that I had stopped expecting to be caught when I fell. Cora, the youngest, was adored in the way youngest children often are, with a softness and indulgence. She could get away with things Marcus and I never could, and nobody talked about it because that's just how it was. We were a normal, complicated, deeply flawed family, like most. I left Ohio for college at 18, studied social work at a state university in Pennsylvania, and built a life there. I was not running away from home. I genuinely wanted to go. But being away from my family also revealed something I had not fully understood while living inside it. The dynamics I had normalized were not normal. The way Marcus was spoken about, reverently, always, and the way I was spoken about, fondly but dismissively, was a pattern, not a coincidence. Still, I called home every Sunday. I visited for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I sent birthday cards and remembered anniversaries. I was the daughter who stayed connected, who made the effort, who showed up even when it was inconvenient. Because that is who I was. That is who I had always been. I met Daniel when I was 26. He was a structural engineer, calm and methodical, with the kind of steadiness that felt like coming home. We dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and we were married in the autumn of my 29th year. It was a small wedding, intimate, outdoors, the kind where people actually talked to each other instead of just posing for photos. My parents came. Cora was my maid of honor. Marcus gave a toast that was mostly about himself, but nobody said anything about that because he was charming, and everyone laughed. Daniel and I were happy, not in an Instagram way, in a real way, the kind that involves arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes, and still reaching for each other's hands in the dark. We bought a small house. We got a cat named Fig. We talked about having children. And then, Daniel was offered a job, a significant one, a project management role for a large infrastructure firm based in Seattle. The opportunity was real. The salary was life-changing. And after long conversations and a lot of lists and more than a few late-night discussions, we decided to go. My family was not happy about this. My mother cried. Not privately, but on the phone, loudly enough that I had to hold the receiver away from my ear. My father said very little, which with him meant disapproval. And Marcus said something I stored away in a quiet drawer in my mind, something I would not fully process until much later. He said, "You know, Lily, some people prioritize family, but I guess that's your choice." I said nothing. I smiled through it. I packed my boxes. Seattle was good to us. Daniel thrived at his job. I found work with a nonprofit that served foster youth, which was meaningful in a way few things had been. We made friends, learned the city, got used to the rain, and 14 months after we moved, I found out I was pregnant. We were overjoyed. Daniel held me and we just stood in the kitchen for a long time without saying anything. I called my parents immediately. My mother cried again, happy tears this time, I think, though with her it was sometimes hard to tell. My father said congratulations in the voice he reserved for things he was genuinely moved by. And Marcus texted me 2 days later. 2 days, with a thumbs up emoji and congrats lil sis. My pregnancy was healthy and mostly uncomplicated, which I know is not something everyone gets to say, and I am grateful for it. I had morning sickness in the first trimester, lower back pain by the 7th month, and a general feeling of magnificent inconvenience that I would not trade for anything. Daniel was present and involved in a way I had not even known to ask for. Coming to every appointment, reading the books, setting up the nursery on a weekend in November, with a focus that made me love him even more. We talked about whether I wanted my mother there for the birth. It was a complicated question. Seattle is far from Ohio. My mother had her own health concerns, a bad hip, ongoing issues with blood pressure, and our relationship, while loving, had always carried that invisible weight of expectations and disappointments that mother-daughter relationships sometimes carry. I decided I wanted it to be Daniel and me, at least for the birth itself, and then family would come visit after. My mother agreed, somewhat reluctantly. My father said whatever I needed. Marcus did not ask at all. My due date was January 21st. On January 19th, a Thursday evening, Daniel got a call. There had been an accident on the project site in Portland, not involving him directly, but involving a crew he oversaw, and the situation required his immediate presence. Someone had been hurt. There were liability questions. His company needed him there that night. We looked at each other across our kitchen, and we both knew. He had to go. The job required it, the ethics of it required it, and my due date was still 2 days away. First babies, our midwife had said, almost always come late. We were probably fine. He drove to Portland. I stayed home with Fig and a book I could not focus on, and a phone in my hand. At 2:17 in the morning on January 20th, my water broke. I called Daniel first. He was on his way back, had already started driving the moment I texted him that something felt off. But Portland to Seattle is 3 hours minimum, and in that moment, 3 hours felt like a foreign country. I called my midwife. She told me to come in, calmly and without alarm, but to come soon. And then, I do not know why, exactly, maybe because it was almost 3 in the morning, and I was frightened, and I wanted someone from my family, I called my mother. She did not answer. I called my father. He answered, groggy, and when I explained what was happening, he said, "Oh honey, we're all the way in Ohio, there's nothing we can do." "Is Daniel on his way?" "Yes," I said. "He's on his way." "Okay, we'll just call a cab, sweetheart. You'll be fine." "Call us when there's news. Call a cab. I'll be fine." I sat on the edge of my bathroom floor with contractions coming fast and the floor cold beneath me, and I thought, okay, I will be fine. I am always fine. But I needed someone to know. I needed someone to say, "I see you, Lily. This is terrifying, and I am with you even from far away." So I called Marcus. He was awake. I could hear it in his voice immediately. No sleep fog. Alert. Later I would wonder what he had been doing at 3 in the morning, but in that moment I only cared that he was awake. "Marcus," I said, "my water broke. Daniel is on his way from Portland, but it's going to be a while. And Lily." His voice was even, calm. Not the calm of someone trying to comfort you, but the calm of someone who has already decided the answer before you finish the question. "You live in Seattle. What exactly do you want me to do?" I wanted to hear a voice. "I'm a little scared." "You're going to be fine. You're healthy, you've had a good pregnancy. This is what hospitals are for. Just call a car service. They do this all the time. It's not that serious. It's not that serious. I hung up. I called a rideshare. The driver, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, who had a rosary hanging from her mirror and a bobblehead on the dashboard, took one look at me, gripping the door handle through a contraction, and said, "Honey, you hold on, I've got you." And she talked to me the whole way to the hospital. About her own 3 kids, about the time her sister gave birth in a parking lot, about how strong women are, how we carry the world and somehow still manage to walk forward. Patricia from Lyft did more for me that night than my entire family combined. I got to the hospital at 3:47 a.m. Daniel arrived at 6:22 a.m. Our daughter was born at 8:09 a.m. on January 20th. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and a cry that sounded like she was already announcing herself to the world. We named her Rosalind. Rosie, mostly. And the moment they placed her on my chest, all the cold of that bathroom floor, all the empty phone calls, all the years of making myself small, it did not disappear, but it moved. It moved to the outside of me instead of the inside, like something I could finally see clearly. Daniel held her and wept openly, which I had never seen him do, and that undid me completely. We were a family of 3 now, and everything was about to change. My parents flew out when Rosie was 2 weeks old. My mother arrived with casseroles, frozen in labeled containers, and a suitcase full of baby clothes, and the particular energy of a woman who is going to be helpful whether you need it or not. My father was quiet and tender with Rosie in a way I had never quite seen from him, and for a few days, it felt like something was healing between us without either of us having to name it. I did not bring up the phone call. My mother held Rosie for hours. She rocked her and sang to her the same songs she had sung to us, and watching it, I felt something complicated. Love and grief and longing all braided together. I wanted my mother. I had always wanted my mother. I had just also learned, over many years, not to need her too loudly. They stayed for 5 days and then flew home. Before she left, my mother took my face in her hands and said, "She's perfect, Lily. You did beautifully." And I said, "Thank you," because that was the script and I knew it by heart. Marcus did not visit. He sent a gift, a very nice gift actually, a high-end stroller that I had mentioned in passing on a phone call months earlier, so he had clearly listened at some point. There was a card that said, "Congrats to the new family. Love, Marcus," and that was it. Life continued. Rosie grew. She was a good baby, not that I believe in good and bad babies. All babies are just babies being babies. But she slept in decent stretches. She was curious and alert from early on, and she had this laugh that started somewhere deep in her belly and came out like a question. Daniel and I settled into parenthood the way you settle into most hard and wonderful things, imperfectly, exhaustedly, gratefully. I went back to part-time work when Rosie was 4 months old. Daniel's job remained demanding but flexible. We hired a part-time nanny named Grace, who was patient and warm, and who Rosie clearly adored, which caused me the particular complicated grief of working mothers everywhere. And then, 7 months after Rosie was born, something shifted. Marcus called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Not a text, a call, which was unusual enough that I picked up immediately, assuming something was wrong. "Hey," he said, "how's Rosie?" "She's great, pulling herself up on furniture now." "What's going on?" "I've been thinking a lot lately. About family. About what matters." A pause. "I think I want to be more present in her life." I was moved, actually. I told him that. I said I thought that was wonderful, that Rosie would love to know her uncle, that we would love to have him visit. "Yeah," he said, "about that. I was thinking, what if she spent some time with me? Just a week or 2 to start. I could come get her." I remember setting my coffee cup down very carefully. "She's 7 months old, Marcus." "I know, but kids are resilient, right? And it would be good for her to bond with family." "She's 7 months old. She's exclusively still doing purees. She's not at a stage where—" "Lily, I'm not trying to take her away. I just want to be in her life." He paused again. "Mom and Dad think it's a good idea too." I got off the call politely but quickly, and then I sat with the feeling in my chest for a long time, trying to figure out what it was. It took me a while to name it. It was recognition. He started using that word, stability, and something about it made the hair on my arms stand up. My parents, I came to understand through these calls, were actively involved. My mother would mention casually that Marcus had been over for dinner, and they had been talking about Rosie's future. My father would say things like, "We just want to make sure she knows where she comes from, Lily." It started to feel coordinated in a way I could not prove and could not shake. Then Marcus lost his job. He worked in finance, had built a genuinely successful career, but there had been some kind of restructuring at his firm, and suddenly Marcus, at 42, was unemployed for the first time in his adult life. My first instinct was sympathy. My second instinct, which arrived about 48 hours later, was dread, because within 2 weeks of losing his job, Marcus called me and said something that rearranged every conversation we had ever had. "Lily," he said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want you to really hear me out before you respond." Okay. I'm at a point in my life where I want to focus on what matters. Family, roots, raising the next generation right. A beat. I don't have kids of my own. I'm not married. And I've watched you and Daniel struggle with the distance and the childcare, and look, I just think there's a real opportunity here. An opportunity. For Rosie. For all of us. What if she came to live with me? With us, with me and Mom and Dad. In Ohio. Where she'd have family around her, stability, a real community. You and Daniel could visit whenever you wanted. We'd make it work. The silence that followed lasted so long that Marcus said, "Lily, are you there?" "You want my daughter," I said. "I want to raise her, properly, with family." "She has family. She has Daniel." "I know, but you're so far away, and—" "Marcus." My voice came out low and very level. I had not planned that, it just came. "She is my child, mine and Daniel's. She is not an opportunity. She is not a solution to your loneliness, or your job loss, or whatever is happening in your life right now. She is a person. She is my daughter, and the answer is no." He did not take it well. What followed was one of the more disorienting weeks of my adult life. Marcus called 3 more times, not to apologize, but to escalate. He sent me a long email laying out, with the kind of systematic precision that only comes from people who are very intelligent and very wrong, the argument for why Rosie would be better served in Ohio. He cited the school systems, he cited outdoor space, he cited the presence of extended family. He cited, obliquely and then not so obliquely, my mental health after Rosie's birth. I had experienced mild postpartum anxiety, which I had mentioned to my mother in confidence, and which had apparently become part of the case being built against me. My mother called and cried, and said she just wanted what was best for everyone, and could we all just talk about this calmly as a family. My father sent a single text that said, "Your brother loves that little girl. Think about what you're really saying no to." I did not respond for 3 days. Instead, I called a therapist. And then I called a lawyer. The lawyer, a family law attorney named Andrea, who had a calm, direct manner I immediately trusted, listened to everything I told her, and then said something that I wrote down and have kept. "You are not overreacting. You need to understand that what your family is describing, even if they believe it comes from love, constitutes an attempted informal removal of custody. No court would grant this, but you need to protect yourself in case it goes there." She helped me document everything, every call, every email, every text. She advised me to keep communication in writing as much as possible. She told me to be careful about what my daughter's access to my family looked like until this was resolved. It was the most surreal thing I had ever done. Sitting in a lawyer's office in Seattle, talking about my family in Ohio as though they were a legal threat. And yet it was also somehow clarifying, because for the first time in my life, someone official was looking at my situation and not saying, "Well, that's just how families are." Daniel, throughout all of this, was a rock. He was also furious, which surprised me a little, because Daniel tends toward calm. But when I told him about Marcus's proposal, actually using the word raise about our daughter, Daniel went very still in the way he does when he is managing something intense, and then he said, "No, absolutely not, over my dead body." And that was that. He was with me completely, which should not have been remarkable, but which I needed more than I can fully explain. We told Rosie nothing, obviously. She was 9 months old by this point. She did not know that her uncle wanted to take her. She only knew that her daddy made funny faces and her mama sang to her off-key, and that Fig the cat was fascinating and slightly terrifying in equal measure. I loved her with a ferocity that scared me sometimes. Not the scary kind of scared, the sacred kind. The kind that makes you understand why people do things they would never otherwise do. The kind that makes you understand what you are capable of protecting. I wrote my mother a long letter, not an email, a real letter, on paper. I wrote about being alone in a parking lot with contractions and calling my family and being told to call a cab. I wrote about Patricia from Lyft. I wrote about what it felt like to be told, by the people who were supposed to be my first call in any crisis, that my situation was not serious enough to warrant their presence, their discomfort, their sleep. And then I asked her, gently, because she is my mother and I do love her, how they could possibly think, after that night, that they had earned the right to decide what was best for my daughter. She called me crying and said she had not known how bad that night was. She said she was sorry. She said she had not understood. I believed her, mostly. Parents often do not understand the weight of what they do until someone puts it on paper and makes them hold it. My father called the next day and said in his quiet voice that he was proud of me and that he was sorry. That meant more to me than he will ever know. Marcus did not call. Instead, Marcus, and I am still somewhat stunned by this, Marcus contacted a family mediator. He hired someone and asked that our family participate in formal mediation to come to an agreement about Rosie's future. As though there was something to mediate, as though my daughter's custody was a negotiating table. I forwarded the mediator's letter to Andrea. She called me within an hour. "Do not engage with this," she said. "This is not a legal process. He has no standing. The moment you sit at that table, you legitimize the premise that there is something to discuss." I did not engage. Marcus interpreted my silence as cruelty. He sent me a message, long, wounded, written in the voice of someone who genuinely believes they are the victim, saying that I was being selfish, that I was depriving Rosie of family, that someday she would know the truth. He copied my parents on this message. He used the word alienation. I read it twice. I put my phone down and went and picked up my daughter and sat on the kitchen floor with her while she tried to eat Fig's tail, and I breathed. That was 6 months ago. We are now at the present. Rosie is 18 months old. She walks now, confidently, chaotically, with the energy of someone who has just discovered the concept of legs and cannot believe they come standard. She says about 30 words, including mama, dada, fig, no, more, outside, and heartbreakingly, again. She loves to be read to. She is afraid of vacuum cleaners. She has her father's eyes, and according to people who knew my grandmother's laugh. My family situation is this. My mother and I talk regularly. It is careful, warm, still finding its new shape. She has not taken Marcus's side explicitly, but she has also not confronted him, which is its own kind of position. My father is similar. Present, but not confrontational. They both adore Rosie in the abstract, through photos and video calls. They have visited once since the mediation letter, and that visit was tender and somewhat stilted, but better than I feared. Marcus and I have not spoken in 4 months. I am told through the family grapevine that operates through my mother that Marcus has started therapy. I have no feelings about this, or rather, I have a feeling that is simply good. I hope it helps him. I genuinely do. Because whatever is driving this, the job loss, the loneliness, the unmarried 42-year-oldness of his life, whatever hole he was hoping my daughter might fill, I hope he finds another way to fill it. A healthy way. One that does not involve removing a baby from her parents. My lawyer tells me we are in a stable position. There has been no legal action because there is no grounds for legal action. Marcus cannot take my daughter. There was never a world in which he could. But the fact that I had to come to understand that through a lawyer's calm voice in a conference room, that is something I am still processing. Here's what I know now, sitting on my kitchen floor while Rosie insists on handing me the same toy 17 times in a row. I spent most of my life trying to be low maintenance, trying to take up less space, trying not to need too much from people who had implicitly communicated over many years that my needs were a little too inconvenient. And I got very good at it. I am still, honestly, very good at it. It is a hard habit to unlearn. But here is what that night taught me. January 20th, 3 a.m., a bathroom floor, a rosary swinging from a rearview mirror. It taught me that when you have always been the one who calls a cab, you start to forget that you deserved a ride. You start to forget that it was ever even a question. Rosie is teaching me to take up space, not loudly, not angrily, but firmly. She takes up space so naturally. She walks into a room, and the room rearranges itself around her, which is what babies do, which is what we were all allowed to do once, before we learned to make ourselves smaller. I am learning it back. My daughter will not be small. She will not learn to silence her needs before she even names them. She will know that the people who love her will pick up the phone. She will know that when something is scary, she can say so. She will know that her fear is serious, that she is serious, that all of it is serious. Because I will pick up the phone, every single time, even at 3 a.m., even from 3,000 miles away. That is the kind of mother I am going to be. And Marcus, I hope somewhere in his own healing, he comes to understand the difference between loving someone and needing to possess them, between caring about a child and wanting to solve your own grief with her. Rosie is not a solution. She is a person, and she belongs to herself first, and to us, to Daniel and to me, second. She does not belong to a narrative. She does not belong to a family's unspoken debt. She does not belong to anyone's loneliness. She belongs exactly where she is, right here, handing me the same toy for the 18th time, and I will take it every single time she offers it. Every single time. Now, wherever you are watching this from, whatever time it is, whatever brought you to this story tonight, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where the people who were supposed to show up for you just didn't? Drop where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments right now. And if you've been through something like this, something where family showed you who they really were during the hardest moment, I want to hear it. Because you are not alone in this. Not even a little bit. End question. What would you have done if your own family told you to just call a cab during the worst night of your life? Would you have forgiven them? If Lily's story stayed with you, hit subscribe. Because every week on this channel, we sit with the stories that are hard to tell and harder to hear.